Okay, well, welcome back to Bedhead Cast. This is the 5th episode, and today we're going to talk about light therapy, and we're calling it the Blue Light Special, Sleep and the Moody Blues. So we're going to discuss this whole business around light and blue light because it's a big topic, and how it affects our mood, our attention, and our sleep. So I'll let Chris get on with the word of the day.
Well, I'd like to get on with the word of the day, but I don't know why you always get to introduce everything. Like, you get to start everything. I get to finish the occasional thing. I don't know, but let's leave it for
controversy. You're starting with
well, I don't want to. I don't. It's not just about my feelings, but
I was going to say.
Anyways, okay. I'll give you the word of the day, and you'll love this word.
Okay.
Akasaki.
Whoa. Is that a city in Japan? Or
No, I have a great question. That's what I thought originally. It's actually the guy, I call him the discoverer.
Okay.
The discoverer of blue light.
Oh, really?
Okay.
That's interesting.
And he won the Nobel Prize for this with two or three other guys.
Wow.
Figuring out this, the LED spectrum.
Right, yeah.
And it revolutionized our world in terms of digital screens and being able to have video.
Right. And so what's the range of this is the blue light?
I don't really know the range, Chuck, but I know you do.
Well, I do.
A little bit of showing off. No, that's fine. You go ahead. You go ahead. It's your thing. You know this stuff.
So blue light is in the range of about 400 and what does it say over there, Chris? 400 and 490 nanometers. Is that right? It's what it says.
You say that. I had disputed this, but obviously I got it wrong. Yes, of course.
I used to always say, when people would ask, I would say 450 to 550, but it's more accurately 400 to 490 nanometers, or the wavelength of light. And so that is actually what blue light means. And the therapy, the light therapy, and people know about this because they can go online and buy these lights, has to be, for it to be therapeutically effective within that range, but also 5,000 to 10,000 lux of light. So that's the power of the light as well as the wavelength.
Yeah, the illumination.
Right, and that's the dose.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's, if you look at a regular morning, that's usually at about 10,000 lux. And if you're out and it's at noon, it's around 100,000 lux.
Yeah.
And when we were first treating patients with light therapy for their winter depression, we wondered if it could damage their eyes.
Yeah.
But the sunlight exposure, because of UV rays, have a far greater rate. So the lights they're very, very safe.
Yeah, and effective.
But
I think what's important here for the episode is to discuss sort of the origins, but what is, from a psychiatrist perspective, winter depression? Like, can you give us?
Yeah, it's a type of depression that is comes on in usually the fall and is maximal in January or February and starts to lift in April and May, all based on light exposure.
So it is about the amount of light you get.
It's all about the amount of light. They've done studies in Australia where the temperature doesn't change much, and also in San Diego, where the light doesn't change, or the temperature doesn't change much, but the light does. And it's all about the light and the timing of the light.
Okay. And what about the symptoms? So how does someone know that they have winter depression versus just depression? Like, how do you distinguish that?
That's a great question. It's a type of depression that is it's always characterized by low energy, but it's considered atypical in that more severe episodes of depression and less likely seasonal depression which are considered for the most part milder, is that the appetite and weight can go down with more severe episodes of depression. But with this type of winter depression or the winter depression, it's increased appetite and carbohydrate craving,
yeah.
which raises weight.
Okay. All right. And so, from your perspective, give us a little the history of using light and an example of a patient and what would be expected. Do you use medication?
Yeah, no, we've done studies that show that medications work, but a far more natural approach and a more appealing approach, I think, to most patients is the light therapy.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about light therapy is that if it is going to be effective, it will be effective within 7 days.
Yeah, and that's what my experience is.
Yeah,
if a person responds, they're going to respond.
Yeah. In fact, I remember years ago when people were purchasing light therapy units, they would give a money-back guarantee at day 10 because they knew that the person should be able to return it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess the other thing that's important is to really, because it's kind of bizarre in a way.
Yes.
People wouldn't intuitively think that light made a difference, but it does. We know that it makes a difference. So how was this discovered?
Well, it was discovered. Just from a common sense perspective, California has 39 million people, and Canada has 39 million people.
Right.
Because there's a real draw to a warmer place, but not too warm.
Mm-hmm.
But what they discovered was that every single animal is affected by light and bacteria. But humans didn't seem to respond to light like animals did. And the reason for it was that some very bright guy came up with the idea, what if the humans need a higher illumination of light, going from, so that if you can affect an animal at 5,000 lux brightness, but a human needs 10,000 lux brightness. And once we knew that, then it could be applied to people that would consistently get depressed in the fall, be really depressed in the winter, and then emerge in the spring. But that's a lot of time. And in the olden days, if you were a farmer, it was fine because you had nothing to do in the winter time.
Yeah.
But in the modern world, the pace
You're
is
going
no different.
Yeah. And I think that's where it, like the sleep thing comes. And I know where I started training with one of your psychiatry colleagues who was very involved in the whole light sort of revolution of using light therapeutically. I can say, in the 90s when I started using it, like you almost felt sort of not like a real doctor. When you would suggest light to a person or a patient, they would look at you as if you were weird. Now it's common knowledge, right?
Exactly.
And it has applications that go beyond just using it for winter depression. But I would use it, and people present, there's a pattern, a clinical pattern of delayed sleep phase, or what people would understand as night owls, people who prefer going to bed later and being up later, or if they try to go to bed earlier, can't fall asleep, a typical night owl type of behavior would be actually come along with winter depression. You'd often see the pattern in the same person.
And would you also see that in like more adolescents?
So that's
they
a whole
have different.
Well, so now we're getting complicated because my first exposure was in adults, seeing people who were night owls, and then they also had a pattern to their mood. that would cycle in the winter. And so that was the ideal patient. It was kind of fun because you could treat them with light and you would see a response.
Yes.
And you and I have a colleague, a family physician, who actually had winter depression and rode his bike across the country to promote light therapy for treating winter depression.
Yes, exactly.
And he was a wonderful family doctor and brilliant musician who actually devoted a year to promoting treatment for winter depression because it had affected him so badly.
So I just have to interrupt. Did he have special tires on his bike? Because when you get into the winter time, a lot of people that I know in America can't identify with this, but to ride a bicycle in the wintertime, you need
fat
tires, just like sand, I guess.
When he did it, there was no fat tire bike.
Oh my God! Well, again, that's what he was like.
A remarkable guy.
But he was a remarkable guy.
Yeah, but he was like your classic patient who really struggled in the winter, and so in any case, and it can be debilitating for people.
And I want to say one more thing about this guy. I'm proud to know a doctor that is able to expose himself. I'm not talking about in the winter time or summer, taking his clothes off. I'm talking about your psyche.
Yeah, he never.
The psychology of being able to say, there's actually I do have a mood problem.
Yeah,
I found the solution to it, and I'm better off, and showing other people that that's real.
Yeah, no, and he really is a remarkable guy, but he was a classic kind of person in terms of the suffering he experienced.
Oh, absolutely.
So for me, it was this crossover of what we call delayed phase, which is a night owl, and the mood coming in the same patient. So that was always fascinating to me. Using light, you could see it improve. But now when you talk about adolescence, this is a whole other ball of wax where 20% of the adolescent population, because they're going through adolescence and they're maturing, they will develop a delay in the sleep phase. That's a normal part of it. So parents, of course, get frustrated because the kid doesn't wake up for school, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, exactly.
They're always labeled as being lazy, which used to frustrate me because most of these kids are very smart.
Yes.
And when I see them they're always like top student, just can't get out of bed and go to school.
Right.
And so these are smart kids whose clock is delayed.
Yes.
So I'll tell the parents and the child, look, your brain lives in Honolulu. If you live in Calgary.
Yes.
Your brain lives in Honolulu, so we got to bring it from Honolulu back to Calgary. And that resonates with them.
Yeah, it's a really, that's a great way of describing it.
Permanent jet lag.
Yes.
And the clock is just shifted. And so we call it delayed phase. But these kids would also have, generally speaking, worse mood in the winter and higher cravings for carbohydrates and sweets.
Absolutely.
In the winter months. And they would gain weight in the winter months. And then and of course, in our generation of physicians, sort of the 80s, 90s, we started to see adolescent obesity become actually a thing.
It's a very interesting connection, isn't it?
And pediatric diabetes, which you never saw.
Yeah, exactly.
Never saw diabetes.
Exactly.
Other than type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
So these were interesting things. And then you had the revolution of gaming.
Right.
And in the adolescent population. So this would come sort of 2000s where the kids would start, on a grander scale. Of course, gaming was around before that. But on a grand scale, kids using phones, tablets, computers.
I'm going to interrupt here for a sec just because I know you like to talk. I know you like, and I like to talk too.
Yeah.
Okay, but I want to say one thing. I believe that these screens are giving off blue light.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They're given, and maybe that's why the kids are getting their sleep disturbed.
Yeah, well, so what happened is that we started to see this escalate, the usage of the screens, the amount of time on the screen, the proximity to the bedtime,
right,
and became acutely aware of its health impact in this cohort of adolescents,
right,
where we don't expect there to be, really bad behavior and or poor health behavior, but on such a grand scale.
Right.
and affecting kids. One, reducing activity levels, which is the
Right.
number one absolute worst thing for health.
Yes.
Is reducing activity levels in adolescence.
Right.
Because you're training them into adult life to be sedentary.
Yes.
This is bad.
Yeah.
Then the exposure to light, which affects many things, but one is sleep, as you're saying.
Right.
And then ultimately mood. And this is the whole podcast is devoted to the
Exactly.
relationship of sleep to mental health. And this is sort of this perfect model
Yeah.
of a disorder.
Yeah.
And what, like I say to shift workers, there's no better human experiment than taking a completely normal human being,
Yeah.
put them into shift work, and they get fat and
Yeah.
depressed.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And the element there is the displacement of sleep time to the normal daytime.
Well, and you know, I'm just sort of an aside. They decided a number of years ago in Japan. It's one of my phobias. Okay, you know, I can think, maybe it's an obsession, but I can think negatively about stuff from time to time. And one of my negative things is when I get on a subway ramp, I always think I'm going to step over and the train is going to run me over. And I think that would be bad for me.
Yeah,
okay?
it
But I
wouldn't be
think it's
great.
bad for other people,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, if you can't get, if you're immune to PTSD after watching me get run over by a train,
Yeah, you got something going on.
then there's something going on.
Right.
But not as an aside, guess what they did in Japan in the train stations? They introduced blue lights. They changed the lights in the train stations.
Yeah.
And the suicide rate went down by 84.
Seriously?
I'm not lying to you. I was
Wow.
just reading about it.
No kidding.
I was just reading about it. And
kidding.
that's what they implemented science in the subway.
Subway.
Because they're thinking, hey,
Yeah.
people jump off.
So this is important because we just had my postdoctoral researcher come in and talk about so he sees patients and uses light therapy clinically a lot. I don't do this anymore because I have people like him doing the treatment. But he was talking about that relationship, the new research looking at, exposure to light being critical to how our day goes.
Yes.
Just in general. And so I think this is important for people to understand is that light exposure in the morning is critical and we don't really pay attention to it. We just get on with our day.
Yes.
If you live here in Canada, we don't have light in the morning anymore once October comes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you where they don't have light. They did a big study, which was published, I think it was in 1994, by Daniel Kripke in San Diego.
Yep.
And he used this device to be able to measure light levels and activity levels on people and demonstrated that the average, using this group of patients as an example of the rest of the people in San Diego, between the ages of 40 and 64, they are getting 58 minutes of light
Per day. In San Diego.
In San
So
Diego.
that's like shocking.
It is shocking, and yet it's real.
It's routine.
You get in the car, you drive to the office, you're there depending on how late you stay.
Yeah.
And the big thing is when you drive, it's when you're driving the car in, you need the blue light.
Absolutely.
But you don't need when you're driving home. I guess it probably makes less difference.
So the timing of light is critical.
Okay.
Our exposure to light in the early part of the day sets our brain up for sleep at night. And people don't actually appreciate that or understand that. So we ignore, light exposure. I mean, we just get on with our days and, we go from the house into the garage or whatever. And then we go to our office. And I think the most important thing to explain to people is inside light, like our ambient light, is not the same dose
Right.
as the light from the device, the
Exactly.
satellite.
Yeah.
So that's very important for people to understand. And also they'll say, well, I have a corner office and I get lots of sun or whatever. That's also the glass blocks the actual therapeutic dose of the light. So it is outside light or one of these satellites that gives you that signal in the morning. So we will use the light not only for mood and not only for sleep, but also for attention. Because we have tremendous evidence that light improves attention, and it's all mediated through the retina in the eye.
Right.
So the back of the eye takes that signal and helps us with our mood and our attention and stabilizes our sleep cycle.
Yes.
In conjunction with the hormone that everyone knows about, and people are taking the supplement melatonin, because the light is what regulates melatonin levels. So in psychiatry, is melatonin a thing, like therapeutically, or no?
I would say no.
Okay.
Well, let me. What I would say is that if you can focus on the importance of sleep in terms of psychiatric conditions,
Yeah.
then it has to be
Well, because
part
it's
of the
relative.
armamentarium. Exactly.
Okay, but
It's
you
in
wouldn't use melatonin exogenously, or
No, that would be beyond
what you would do.
what we would normally.
And we do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
We do
yeah.
routinely use melatonin, and so there are great misconceptions about melatonin. So if you don't mind,
Yeah, no,
You sure?
go,
Okay.
no, if you
All right.
insist.
Okay. So one of the things that we want to do at the podcast is sort of dispel misconceptions. And this is a big one out there is, yes, we do use melatonin therapeutically in a sleep clinic setting. We educate family doctors and psychiatrists about how to use melatonin. But the bottom line is that melatonin is not a sedative. It's not used to treat insomnia. Okay? It's used to regulate the sleep cycle, to stabilize the sleep cycle, and that's in conditions like, for instance, adolescents who have delayed sleep phase.
Right.
They're night owls.
Yeah.
But also in two other conditions, shift work and jet lag. And even in that setting, or all three settings, we have very limited concrete evidence that there is a definite therapeutic benefit. So it's important to understand the limitations of using melatonin, which is widely available in any pharmacy, and the doses that you will get far exceed what the therapeutic dose is. So the actual research-based therapeutic dose of melatonin, what do you think it is?
I'm embarrassed to say I don't know.
Throw a number out.
5 milligrams, 10
0.5.
0.5.
Yes.
Wow.
And you will not find 0.5 milligrams in the store. And so it's really important to understand that most people are just taking massive doses of melatonin, like 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams. We have other healthcare professionals recommending 20, 30 milligrams.
Yeah, sure.
And these are insane doses, and there are tremendous side effects that come with melatonin, one of which is brutal nightmares, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
The other is fatigue. So if a person is struggling with their sleep and they're fatigued during the day and then they're taking melatonin, our first job is to actually get them, one, to stop the melatonin and see if that's what's causing their fatigue.
I'm trying to resist making a sarcastic
Please.
comment here. No,
Chris,
I'm trying to
please.
resist. Okay, I'm gonna let
Please
it out.
make it.
I'm gonna let it out.
Let it out.
So you're saying fatigue is not a good idea? Like you're putting down fatigue?
Well, you know, I mean, I don't mind being fatigued because it sort of slows me down a bit.
I wonder. What I've noticed is when you're fatigued, you're able to tolerate me better.
I was
It
going
seems
to
that
say,
way.
do you mean me personally? And you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
I have
yeah.
more patience for you.
You have more patience. Yeah. It's
And
harder
my kids.
to resist.
And my kids.
And
way
well,
more patience.
Yeah. Well, now your kids are being patient with you.
Yeah.
No, that was in the olden days,
Yeah.
Chuck. I'm sorry.
No, but I mean, you and I both know patients don't like being tired, but they also don't like not sleeping or having
Right.
sleep. So they'll do anything to sleep and forget how they feel during the day. This is very common. So they will take an Gravol,
Yep.
to sleep because they just want to sleep. And they don't care that that's actually what's causing them to feel tired. Same thing with melatonin. So we're very careful when we're seeing patients from a sleep perspective, and you know this from psychiatry as well, to go through the lists of medications and look at what maybe one of these could be causing the actual symptom that they came here for in the first place.
Right.
And you know this in bipolar disorder.
Yes.
We use drugs that sedate people for a reason.
Yes.
But sometimes that's the actual cause, and we have to balance all of that out.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you bring that up. Like it's just for the phase when somebody is manic, and when they're not manic, the big concern is the depression.
That comes.
Far more frequent incidence of that, and so that's why, I've always wanted to explain to patients, it's a period of time. When the mania is resolved and the pill is making you sleepy, it will have to be changed.
Yeah. They have to be attentive to the changes.
They have to be.
Many patients aren't. They just carry on.
I think if you're not attentive or you're not alert, people feel like they're not alive.
Right. Yeah,
so
exactly.
Why wouldn't they?
Yeah. But they also forget to address the drugs. This is what I find.
Yes.
Is that, and it's not their fault or whatever. It's that these things aren't, here, take this, see you later.
Yes.
You have to pay attention. You have to reassess both the patient, the doctor, the prescriber. And I think this is one of the things that we want to do is talk about, the way these compounds are misused. And melatonin is desperately, commonly misused. Shift workers, athletes, because we see a lot of athletes,
right,
and they're traveling,
yep,
and they will misuse melatonin. We have to talk to them about it,
right,
and it affects performance,
right. And there's another thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that if the blue light is alerting, and I've wondered about this myself, but there's periods of time when I'm sleeping alone and I wake up in the morning and the first thing I turn on is YouTube.
On your phone?
It's the first thing I do, right?
Why?
I think it's waking me up.
Oh.
Because it's got blue light in it.
Okay.
Okay, this is what you've been telling me.
Okay.
But the other thing I think
so
is
you're blaming this on me?
No, I'm justifying my use of YouTube rather than thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing? Maybe I should read a book.
Right.
But also, it's also reaching out to other people because there's another person on the screen talking to me.
I have an issue with that.
Tell me.
Are you sure?
Well, I'm not saying I'm the only one. I'm not the only one. Yeah. There's many other people they're talking to.
I'm
I know that.
I'm an anti-technology guy.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because I had a great person today in the clinic where I had to have a lengthy conversation with her. She's in nursing school about her attachment to technology. And, you're right.
Yeah.
It gives a person a sense of being connected.
Yes.
But it is a virtual connection, not a real connection.
Exactly.
So then you could say, well, I'm alone. I need to be connected. And I could say to you, go down the street to Starbucks and make a friend.
Well, let me interrupt you.
Maybe I shouldn't talk about Starbucks.
Yeah, no, I don't think we should talk. You know what? Every coffee
is
everybody's got different tastes in coffee.
Well, no, fair enough.
And they go to different coffee shops, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah, we're not sponsored by Starbucks.
We're not sponsored by anybody.
Unfortunately.
And there's a good reason.
Why?
And there's a good reason for that because we're just getting started. But you give it time. Chuck, I'm a believer.
You think Starbucks
but
will be on board?
I'm going to try to get off the Starbucks, other coffee, Good Earth. I'm going to throw out a few names here maybe. But I want to get off the coffee thing so much. Mm-hmm. But how this person that's talking to you, this is one of what I try to bring as a psychiatrist to you, is that what you're doing by helping this person, by trying to encourage them to put their phone down, is is her and your opportunity to interact as real people.
Yes. Because
You
so
know-
I struggle with this the technology thing, because in her life that is actually the major barrier to her sleep issue.
Yeah.
And so she's an extreme night owl.
Yeah.
So her natural rhythm is 3 to 10. That doesn't fit with going to school, because she has to be up at like 6 to 7 to get to school for like starting classes 8:39, right?
Yeah.
And so this is desperately affecting her life. And, you know, now it's summer. She wants to get ready for getting back into school. And she wants a drug to put her to sleep.
Right.
And I'm trying to explain the drug isn't going to work.
But you know, what I think is that, you know, hopefully people are lucky enough to see a doctor that is going to take the time and draw her away
Yeah.
from the phone because of this mutual relationship.
Yeah.
In terms of, you care about her, you think that what she has to say is important, and then the two of you can work together, which is way more rewarding than me watching
YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
Having said that, I will say this final note, because we're coming to the close. The idea of waking up and looking at the phone, you know, there is a light called a dawn simulator.
Yes.
So this is not a foreign concept.
Yes.
And people will know that. They'll be aware of the fact that you can actually buy this light that turns on when you set it.
Yeah.
And it's very helpful for some people.
Yeah, I used to have one.
Right. So you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we go on to homework now for the audience and whatnot. So mine is this, that I think the message is screen time affects your sleep. So ask yourself, okay, so this is your homework. Ask yourself, how many hours a day am I on screen, and how late in the day do I use my phone or tablet? Because that's absolutely critical. Then begin a project with a goal of reducing total screen time by about 50% of your current usage, and stop your exposure at about 6 to 8 p.m., which would be radical for many people, or 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed. There's lots of controversy over whether I'm right or not with that timing, but I'm actually challenging the audience to reduce their exposure to technology, okay? Focus on your real life, not a virtual life.
I not only could I not say it better, I couldn't even say it. But
Thank you very much.
My homework is listen to the blues.
Oh,
You got to listen to the blues, because the blues is uplifting. And why is the blues uplifting? Because you're hearing somebody talk about their pain, and so you can feel like you're not alone.
Right.
That you are suffering, and so is somebody else suffering, and the connection is what it's all about. And when you think about the blues, think about what Chuck is talking about, and try to avoid the blue light at night.
but expose yourself in the morning.
But expose yourself
To
in the
light.
to
No,
light.
yeah,
Oh
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. Don't be taking your
I'm
clothes
talking
off.
when I'm alone.
Right.
Chuck. I'm
Yeah,
just
okay,
alone
all
when
right.
I wake
Okay,
up.
good, all right.
Okay. So it's Goodnight, Blue Moon. Don't hesitate to listen to our podcast, and it'll put you to sleep. Our next episode, it's going to be a deep dive into AI and medicine. That's artificial intelligence.
Not artificial insemination.
Not
No,
artificial
okay, all right.
insemination, not artificial intelligence. And the last thing I'd like to say, and I know Chuck would agree with me on this, get your head, this is at night, of course, get your head to bed.